What's up guys, my name's Liam, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at two brand new mouse pads from Teevolution. We got the Axis and the Gravis. They did put a lot of time and effort into the development of these pads, and they do have a unique build from standard things that are out there today. So in this video, I'm breaking down how my experience has been using them so far. We'll be comparing them to some of the competition out there, and hopefully by the end of this video, I'll be able to help you decide whether or not any one of these could possibly be the perfect mouse pad for you. So let's check it out. And before we get started today, I did want to let you know that these were sent out to me. However, everything you'll be hearing in this video is going to be my own words and my own opinions. These did arrive to my front door in this flat packaging, very premium style packaging and very thick. When I first got these, I was a little bit confused because the box on this is so thick. I thought it might be a glass pad. So well done there on that aspect. But the dimensions of these pads are coming in at 450 millimeters in width by 400 millimeters in height, and they are sitting at 5 millimeters in thickness. Starting over on the bottom, this is using a silicone backing. It's not like a thick piece of silicone or anything like that, because in between the silicone and the surface itself, there is 4 layers of foam. But as far as the actual silicone backing goes, it is a bit firmer. And in fact, when you pick these up, it doesn't have a whole lot of bend to it. It has a little bit more of a stiffer feeling. I will say, however, that the silicone backing on this is incredibly sticky. Like once I actually do get this suction to my desk and planted, kind of hard to move around. I kind of have to lift up one of the corners on the mouse pad in order to be able to move it around. So even though the silicone backing on this does feel on the firmer end of the spectrum, the fact that this does have 4 layers of foam in between, this does have quite a bit of plushness to it. So I was comparing it to a lot of other bases out there, and it does have a similar type of a give to an X-Soft style of a pad as far as the cushioning goes. However, I do feel like the rebound properties on this are actually pretty quick. They do have their logo down here in the bottom right hand side and some printing up here on the top left. When you do move your finger over this, it does feel like it is slightly raised up on the surface, so you can feel it on the bottom of your skates. And another thing on this pad that was done very well is the stitching. The stitching actually sits quite a bit lower than the surface itself. So when it comes to the surface, we are first going to start off with the Gravis, and just the feeling of this on the surface. You do notice a little bit feeling of a texture here when you're rubbing your finger up and down the Y-axis. You don't get hardly any texture at all when moving your finger across the X-axis. And I will say that this surface is definitely one of the more unique styles of surface, something that I haven't really felt too familiar with or replicated very much in the past. You get just a very soft feeling, and the properties on this are actually very unique from lots of other things out there. In fact, I would even go ahead and label this as one of the slowest mouse pads that I have ever tested. So I wouldn't really necessarily say that there's any type of speed when it does come to this. This is just a very heavily controlled and even a mud pad. You get a very high sense of static friction. And in fact, the more weight that you put on top of your mouse and the more that you push into it, like it gets really hard to move around, even just with your micro corrections. On the dynamic glide, I mean, you can just kind of see there, I'll try and push it really hard. You get like almost no type of a glide on here as you're using it. From the second that you release it, it just instantly just starts breaking. So just overall a very slow experience. And in fact, I don't really have too many other types of things, though I do feel like I've experienced with mouse pads kind of somewhat similar to this performance in the past. It's really hard to just kind of break this down and compare it to other things, because as I was trying to do even just simple things like a glide test on this, you get like practically no movement. So I do apologize. It is really difficult just to try and compare this to other things. But I just want to be clear with you guys, if you are looking for one of the most controlled experiences out there as far as a mouse pad goes, something that's just going to give you resistance every step of the way. And again, if you are looking for that muddy feeling to where almost like when you get to a stop, if you're pushing to the pad, you can't even necessarily hardly move your mouse around that much at all, then I would definitely say that this is a pad that you should look into. For me, I prefer things on the faster end of the spectrum. I don't play very well with mud pads, so I did really try and test this out as much as I could. I was just having a really hard time aiming with it and shooting with my play style and my typical preference in mouse pads. All right, so next up we have the Axis. This is more of a balanced mouse pad. That is what they have it categorized as. The one thing that this surface did kind of remind me of when I first got my hands on it, when you do rub your finger across both the X and the Y axis, it does have a pretty heavy texture on it. And just off the top of my head, it felt similar to something like a Hayate Atsu. When I actually did pull out my Hayate Atsu and I was comparing them to one another, I do feel like the Hayate Atsu does have a more abrasive surface than this one. So this one does feel a bit smoother, but just so you do know, this does have a heavier style of a texture. So do just keep in mind the Hayate Atsu is a speed pad a lot faster than this one. This one definitely does feel more controlled. I will say though that, however, on the static friction, it does have a bit of a lower static friction. You do get just a little bit amount of tugging back and forth here when it does come to the static, but this is a little bit more of my alley as far as performance goes. I was able to game much better on this one. And then you do have, I would say, a decently quick glide across the dynamic of the surface of this, though it isn't really that fast. I did compare it to another balance pad, one of the most popular balance pads of all time, the GSR SE2 or the HSR SE2. And I will say that there's a noticeable difference between both the pads as I was going back and forth and testing them out. I did feel like this one has a little bit more tugging in the static friction, so a little bit higher static than the HSR SE2. And then on top of that, the dynamic glide, though I wouldn't say they're incredibly far apart from one another, this one did feel like it was a little bit slower across the dynamic glide. So I'll go ahead and drop a glide test comparison between both of them. The one that the performance of this does kind of come closest to, in my opinion, is going to be something like the Zowie GSR3 or the SR3. And I do want to be very clear with you guys, the feeling of the surfaces, they do feel pretty different from one another. Whereas on the Zowie GSR3, it does feel like it is a bit of a smoother surface. Again, where this one does have quite a bit more texture to it. However, with that being said, the static friction between both of them really didn't feel like it was that far apart as I was testing them out next to each other. And even the dynamic glide on them, truly just the speed felt pretty close, just in the overall performance to one another. So I'll just go ahead and drop a glide test comparison between both of them. All right, guys, so that about wraps things up on these brand new Teevolution pads. And I really do admire and respect the amount of effort that they did put in the design of these. Like I said, just the fact that the stitching on this is very low. They did bring us a pretty unique build, having a silicone backing, 4 layers of foam in the middle, and honestly some pretty different and unique surfaces, especially when it does come to the Gravis. And like I said, clearly that is not going to be the surface of the pad for me, but I do think that is a really cool concept. If you're looking for incredibly controlled mouse pads, especially ones that are definitely categorized as a mud pad, when it does come to the Axis, also a pretty cool option as well. I actually do really like the performance of this pad. It does feel pretty good, smooth glide overall. You get a decent sense of control on this. The one thing I would say is the first thing I said to them when I got these pads in is I said, the build on them feels good, but for me, the 500 by 500 or even just a little bit bigger 490 by 420 works out a little bit. This 450 by 400, just a little bit too small of a size for what I am used to. So hopefully they will be able to bring us some bigger sizes in the near future. So again, between both of these, my pick for my personal preference is going to be the Axis. Again, I do like the performance of this. I do kind of prefer a little bit of smoother surfaces though, compared to a little bit of a heavier style of a texture, but I really do enjoy just the different and unique feeling that you do get in these. And I'm excited to see what else they're going to have to offer in the near future. So if you guys do have any additional questions or feel like I left anything out, please let me know in the comments down below. If you had enjoyed watching this video and are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.